Hello and welcome back to another Tea Time with me, Meoni, for Final Fantasy XIV, the video series where I get to sit down with you guys as if I was live streaming to you and talk to you as if you were here live and talk about pretty much everything that's going on. So as of Sunday, the 9th of February, so yesterday at the time of recording of this video, we actually got the results through for the Valentiones Day event. Just to reiterate, the event basically has two sets of quests accessed at two separate dates. So the original event itself took place on Wednesday the 29th of January and ended yesterday at the 9th of February. From the 9th of February, so yesterday, until Monday the 17th, you're able to go to the amphitheatre in Gridania, in Old Gridania, and actually pick up the second quest line, which will give you a quest line dependent on your server's total votes for the NPC that the majority of people chose. Now, the results came in, and to no one's real surprise, everywhere pretty much across the entire world voted for Astrid. Now, that's the entirety of Chaos Data Center, Light Data Center, Ether and Crystal, I believe, and past that I have no news. I'm not sure if the Japanese servers did the same, but essentially the majority of the world are now locked to seeing the Astrid questline, which means that the other two participants, the NPCs, Rodegalt and Bert, are basically impossible to see their conclusion because they were not voted for. If you actually talk to those NPCs when you go back to the amphitheatre, like Rodegalt and Bert, they also have some rather salty sort of defeatist storyline to talk through, which I found rather entertaining. Astrid's storyline to me at the end felt a little bit, well, average, and the cutscenes were fairly basic, but at the same time, this to me still strikes as a precursor for things to come. This technology with voting based on people's interactions with NPCs, basically tallying up the total of whoever basically turned in the most to whichever NPC, does seem to me like a precursor to perhaps the use of this technology elsewhere. We made a video recently where I theorized that maybe in the future they could use this technology now that it's proved in something minor like this event for something like the Ishgard restoration. The approach to a building and its type depending on what people vote for. For example, we build the next ward of the Ishgard restoration, and this particular big building could either be a tavern or a bathhouse depending on the majority of people. Now, obviously, we're going to be continuing the realm-locked progression of these things. Square Enix have apologized that people realm jumping in that data center was actually skewing things. It was messing with the progression of that particular realm. After all, there are web pages to track the progression of this, to try and encourage people on that particular server to work together, but people were jumping across and completing it for them. And in some certain situations, people that were native to that server couldn't zone into the firmament to complete their turn-ins and actually missed the fate events for that progression, which is really unfortunate. They're guaranteeing that that will never happen again, and so it's server locked now. So the perfect use of this technology, in my opinion, would be to further explore the limits of player voting. Now, in many ways, you could see this as a massive failure with the Valentiones Day event. A lot of people are saying, wow, what a failure. Everywhere voted for Astrid. But at the same time, this is a good reflection of what the majority of people are like. I mean, myself included, we had a bit of a promotion. I posted on Twitter, vote for Astrid, the one true ardor of love. And specifically, that was the main reason I went with her in particular. Now, Rodegalt and Bert may have had a better sort of solution dialogue-wise, but, it's tough at the end of the day. People voted for Astrid. Now, does that make a very democratic sort of decision? Well, kind of, yeah. The people have spoken. It's very much like an election in real life, The majority of people go for something, it wins, and you miss out on the other option, whether it was a better option or otherwise in this particular situation. It's very interesting to explore that sort of data. It reminds me a little bit of when people were doing studies on World of Warcraft based on the plague event that happened, where they were sort of analyzing the spread of a plague, and, this was actually recognized by a, what was it? I think it was the World Health Organization used it as data for an example of how a real-life plague of that size could spread. And this kind of reminds me of that. I mean, on a much more minor scale. But it's interesting to see how clear cut that decision was and how many people voted for Astrid. There are also reports of people boycotting the entire event and voting purely for Astrid just to make it look like there isn't any other option. And, that's another ulterior motive. But then on the same side, we have people who just wanted the red outfit without having to dye it. Bear in mind, you could get all the colors of this outfit essentially by just dyeing it. But essentially, the default dye option that came with that reward was the color of the NPC you chose. Red for Astrid, blue for Rodegalt, and Bert was yellow. So yeah, we had a lot of very interesting factors this time around. Will this change in the future? If there are any other potential votes, will this come down to people campaigning for it? Or will it be another boycott situation where people are forcefully voting for a particular NPC or a particular thing just because they can? So this is obviously locked to character. So you could technically make multiple characters on the same account and vote for this. So, there's a lot of things to take in at this point. They say that votes would be counted separately for each world. Furthermore, the event will change as players continue to cast their votes, the results of which will determine what additional quests can be accepted as they progress through the storyline. So that was what they had on their official results sort of page. Now, they haven't posted a lodestone about this. I thought they might do a follow-up and say, hey, Astrid won everywhere. I'm expecting that there'll be like a developer blog or something or some feedback. It'll be interesting to see whether or not they're surprised by this result. Personally, I don't think they will be. They sort of skewed it very heavily in the favor of the person who had Valentiones as a last name, right? It was kind of obvious that Astrid would continue that sort of family tradition and Rodegalt and Bert wouldn't get a look in. Also, red is a much more dominant color if you want to go down that route. But yeah, did you vote for Astrid? That's really the question. Leave your comment below. I'm very interested to see how many of my viewers actually voted for Astrid in particular. So apart from that, what do we get from this? Well, there is an achievement called the Warrior of Love. Sadly, that doesn't give you a title. I was kind of hoping for a title to come with that, to just show up somewhere like the Honeybee Inn and go, hey, I'm the Warrior of Love, baby. But no, sadly not. It's just an achievement, which is a bit of a, there's not really any reward for logging in and completing this other than the achievement. So it kind of fell short a bit for most people. Like, why would I even bother going over there? Well, it's interesting to see the ending cutscene. Bear in mind, you will only be able to see that cutscene until the event ends on the 17th of February, I believe 2:59 p.m. GMT. So that's going to be, gone forever after that point. But yeah, let me know what you think about the voting situation and whether or not you think that it was a fair vote and whether or not this is the sort of thing you'd like to see more of in the future. Now let's move away from the Valentiones Day event, which is all kinds of interesting for me personally. You'll remember that I did a video all about Yoshi P's responses and stances on the use of third-party tools and, of course, modifications to the game. Now, that received quite a heavy amount of, well, let's call them mixed comments. We had some rather negative comments, and we also had some really positive ones. But for the most part, in general, I think people thought that I was having my own opinion on this too much, as usual. And I can't make a video like that without sharing my own opinions. I did say in that, though, that the majority of people that might not like the idea of actual third-party modifications might be against it purely because they play on a PlayStation, and I have no proof towards that, and people have pointed that out in the comment section. But at the same time, isn't it general logic that some people might be against the idea if they can't do it themselves? It's the fear of missing out type of deal that we deal with every day on this game. That's why these events are, a huge attraction to bring people back into the game that we see all the time. Every patch, somebody comes back just to do a certain activity or get a piece of glamour, and then they unsub again and go and play other games, which is completely healthy. But, it is a thing that I'm very much aware of people saying, and I've seen comments before when we used to do mod videos a very long time ago before I had to remove those. But we had people commenting, I hate mods because I can't use them. I hate people who modify the game because I can't do it myself. And that's purely, one of the biggest things I've seen. It might not be true across the entire board, but it is very much part of that minority that are against it. But at the same time, we had some really interesting comments on there about the structure of these sort of situations, the policy itself, what they choose to enforce and what they do not. So hopefully you found it interesting. I would read through some of those comments live, but again, we'll just be opening another can of worms. But hopefully you enjoyed that video. Other things that have been happening in Final Fantasy XIV. Well, we got the live letter that everybody was looking forward to, myself included. We finally got details on stuff like ocean fishing, which blows my absolute mind. I cannot wait to try that out when the patch comes out. For some reason, that's the thing that's on the top of my mind at the minute. I saw all of the other wonderful things like Ruby Weapon, which I can't wait to do, and obviously the continuation of the main storyline gets me incredibly hyped. But ocean fishing, man, like you sit down and you start to look into that and realize that every couple of hours you can hop on a boat with a load of people and just have some fun. That's the stuff that I enjoy most in this game. It might not be useful in the slightest, but you might only get a few scripts out of it, maybe a housing item or something, but I'll go and do it. It sounds fun. It's a challenge here and there. It's something you can do with other people, and it'll keep us busy. These little individual pieces of content, this padding, is stuff that's revisitable, and they plan to expand upon it in the future. Unlike stuff like Eureka, which was main content, which is practically dead now, this is the sort of stuff I like to see added to the game because it won't die instantly, because you can always update it with new items. It's not based on a level cap. It's not based on any syncing technology. So for me, this was a big hit, and I cannot wait to see more, especially the sort of things we end up doing with pirates in the future. They mentioned the idea of a fishing battle against a pirate. Bit of a weird situation. A pirate aboard your boat and goes, "Rah, I'm not going to gut you. Instead, I'm going to challenge you to whoever can catch the most fish," which is a really weird thing if you think about it. But at the same time, it's Final Fantasy. You can think what you like. So yeah, I was really hyped for 5.2 and all of the bits that they talked about. But we got further details on the umbrella. I know a lot of people in the RP community and glamour posing, like the G-pose community, who are very hyped to be able to take pictures with their umbrellas swinging around. It did look a little bit static on the footage we were shown. I was a little bit concerned. And of course, there was a really big missed opportunity with the actual thing, because essentially what they've done is they've reworked the mount technology to be able to get this to work. So you essentially summon an umbrella, only this is unlike the mounts. We can actually use this in main city states as well. But it acts very much like a mount. You can't perform any other actions whilst you have the umbrella summoned. You can't use it in combat, for example, or anything like that. And I would presume that the majority of emotes won't work with this as well. I would expect that stuff like expressions and maybe some, whilst seated type emotes might work like they do on the back of a mount. But it looks very restricted. But one of the biggest missed opportunities is the ability to jump off a cliff and float like Mary Poppins. I was screaming it at the monitor. Please, please, please show us this. Please let this be an actual thing. And they missed that opportunity. And I'm really quite sad. But I would imagine it would be quite powerful in certain situations. Imagine jumping off a cliff in PvP and floating to the floor without taking falling damage. I would imagine that'd be quite fun indeed, but incredibly powerful. But again, to me, that was a missed opportunity with how much effort they'd clearly put into making this work for people, which, if you think about it, is a massively, overworked sort of system just to use for umbrellas. To me, every time Yoshi P gets asked if we can see something added to the game, it comes down to the simple response of the budget, the time they have to develop it, and of course spaghetti code from 1.0. And these excuses, those three excuses, are used pretty much every time. So to suddenly see something crazy like, oh yeah, this has been talked about for a long time and we've finally put it in, but we've reworked the mount system to work for umbrellas, and this is what they look like. It was really quite bizarre to me. They could have easily just put this in as a particular glamour weapon or something, or I don't know how they would have done it otherwise, but it was quite surprising to me to see the sort of lengths that they went to just for essentially what is an RP tool. But I'm quite happy regardless, and I know other people are, but there are always going to be those people who say, well, if I can't use it in combat, what's the point? Or if I can't display certain emotes with it, what's the point? But this is something I'm sure they will develop in the future. Maybe even, hopefully one day we get the ability to have certain dances with some of these umbrellas. Maybe they add one with a singing in the rain sort of dance. That would make me very happy indeed. Other things from 5.2 that got me incredibly hyped, and that's obviously the fights in the next tier of Eden. I'm actually going to be raiding again this particular patch. So we've got a static up and running now with some members of the community, both Patreons and viewers. And yeah, we're going to hit it hard and do some Savage. So hopefully we can get some videos out on that as well. Fingers crossed that we do well enough for that. But yeah, the bosses look interesting. So we've got like an Ixion Ramu, and then we have Ifrit and Garuda side by side. I did kind of predict that we would see both Ifrit with Garuda maybe as a separate fight or something like that, but together is awesome. I expect the screen to be filled with nails though, since we're fighting Ifrit again. I could only imagine the craziness of that, especially the footage we saw of the new Ramu model with all of those balls on the platform to pick up. That's going to be quite entertaining indeed. I'm really looking forward to the raid series, and the raid gear looks absolutely exceptional as well. You should definitely go check that out. They showed it on the special site and also on the trailer. We need to do a trailer breakdown video at some point as well. I might do that for tomorrow. But yes, I'm very, very hyped for 5.2 indeed. And there's lots of stuff as well in the live letter that was talked about for 5.3 and 5.35 with the continuation and the advancement of the new relic weapon, which I'm very much sort of apprehensive about at the moment. They sort of like mentioned Eureka style content with field instances, but the more I think about it and the idea of that we're going to the Bosjar Citadel, the more I think about it from a lore perspective, perhaps that means since they're using the Return to Ivalice series as a precursor to be able to actually continue it, maybe we'll be going through certain field instances, kind of like Eureka Animos and Hydatos, etc. But maybe these are actual places as opposed to just Eureka instances. Like we have a Eureka style instance that's this particular Great Wood type area for the Viera under oppression by the Garleans. And then we go to like this other area next to the mountains that is under this oppression. It would be really nice to have that sort of Cartano flat style situation where you're fighting against the Imperial Legion and really in the thick of that and trying to free them from oppression. That would be a really cool way of getting a relic weapon born out of pure warfare, you know. That can be just, you can imagine the sort of thing that you would see there. So in many ways I'm quite hyped for that. But then they also mentioned briefly the idea of instance content within those field instances. And it was mentioned Baldessian Arsenal 2.0, or Baldessian Arsenal 2 was literally the translation we got on Discord. So at that point, I was a little bit irritated and scared because Baldessian Arsenal to me represents something that should have never been implemented the way it was. I always wanted Baldessian Arsenal to be queued in as a separate duty, simply based on the fact that people were really, really quite toxic in the instances. It was annoying to try and get people together. The organization behind that content was absolutely awful and ultimately resulted in me not being able to actually complete a Baldessian Arsenal just based on the toxicity of people stealing portals or alternatively people coming in saying it's their instance and not letting anyone else get to portals, and people reporting each other left, right and center, and horrible forum posts and exploits and you name it. People were going ham during that content, and it could have all been avoided if they just had a duty finder listing that you could queue in for. And hopefully they might do something similar to that this time, without making people go into the instance and then create parties in there, because it never seems to work very well. And hopefully they've learnt from that. They do say they have learnt from the Eureka problems in the past, and hopefully Baldessian Arsenal 2.0 isn't a travesty like the first one. I mean, I know a lot of people enjoyed BA, and a lot of people had success in it, and I imagine a lot of people will comment below, I don't see the problem, I enjoyed it, I got so many clears. But at the same time, there are so many people who didn't enjoy it because they weren't able to even have a chance of taking part, let alone actually engage with the right people via third-party tools such as Discord to actually arrange these groups. So yeah, hopefully they don't go down the same route as that. Apart from that, I'm pretty hyped for 5.2. Like I say, there's not really much else for me to blabber on about. You've seen my videos. I'm excited to bring you content from those. So let me know what you're most excited for 5.2 in the comment section. Again, who you voted for in the Valentiones Day event. I'm very interested to see that. And I will indeed see you all next time.